When a field medic saves the wrong life on a dying planet, he doesn't just change the war, he rewrites the rules of an empire that has stood for millennia. The firestorms on Marion 4 never paused, they only changed colors. Lieutenant Leon Hale would remember this later, when historians asked him about the moment that rewrote galactic history. But on that third day of siege, kneeling in the ruins of Research Outpost Fate 9, with his hands buried in a dying soldier's chest cavity, Leon wasn't thinking about history. He was thinking about keeping one more heart beating through the next 60 seconds. The plasma burns painted the sky in shades he'd memorized like a gruesome palette, copper orange when it hit starship fragments, sickly violet when synthetic flesh ignited, and that gray, that specific gray that tasted like dying ozone and settled on the tongue like ash. Every breath was a weighted calculation. His gloved fingers moved with practiced precision, sealing a ruptured artery with fast foam that hissed like something alive and angry. "Don't speak," Leon murmured, his voice carrying that peculiar calm he'd cultivated over 3 tours. "Your body needs oxygen, not commentary." The private wheezed a laugh that became a wince. "Doc, we're not getting out of this one." "Incorrect." Leon's hands never stopped moving. "I am far too stubborn to die today, and you are not allowed to make me look bad in my weekly reports." The man actually smiled. Leon preferred that. Fear made pulse readings erratic. He finished stabilizing the soldier, pressed a tracking beacon onto the man's wrist, then pushed to his feet. His medical HUD listed 19 patients in the vicinity. Supplies, almost none. Hope, even less. The ceiling shuddered as another barrage landed somewhere uncomfortably close, raining dust and the memory of what this building used to be. Captain Ray appeared in the doorway, armor cracked, jaw set in that particular way that meant bad news delivered quickly. "Hale, we're abandoning Fate 9. Enemy vanguard broke through the southern ridge. We leave in 20 minutes. Leon checked the vitals, scrolling across his HUD. "Most can walk. For need stretchers." "We don't have 4 stretchers or 4 carriers." Ray's voice was flat, factual, the tone of someone who'd already made the terrible calculations. "Then give me 30 minutes to stabilize them for transport." "I can give you 15. "Then people die." Ray's jaw tightened. "People are dying everywhere, Hale. If you stay behind, you'll join them. One medic saving hundreds is better than one medic dying to save 4. Leon had heard this argument too many times. Logic agreed. His ethics didn't. 15 minutes, he said, already moving. A sound cut through the battlefield's familiar symphony of destruction. Not gunfire, not collapsing walls, something else. A ragged breath that didn't belong. Leon froze, turned, listened. There it was again. Soft, fractured, too light, and too resonant to be human. His translator implant couldn't categorize the tonal pattern. "Anyone alive in there?" Leon called, stepping toward the collapsed research wing. The private he just saved muttered, "Doc, that's a terrible idea." Leon ignored him. He always did when patients offered tactical advice. He navigated twisted beams and shattered polycrete, following those faint, weakening breaths. His wrist light cut through the soot-thick darkness like a blade through smoke. And then he saw her. Pinned beneath a fallen bulkhead, half buried in rubble, her body was a study in contradictions. Luminous skin fractured with dust and dried blood. Silver-black hair spilling across broken tiles like liquid midnight. Ears that were human-shaped but elegantly tapered at the tips, trembling with each shallow breath. Her armor was unlike anything in human or crash design, smooth as liquid metal, engraved with geometric sigils that pulsed faintly as if still defending a dying power core. She wasn't human, and she was dying. Leon knelt instantly, his med scanner sweeping across her. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding, severe cranial trauma, pulse faint and irregular, like a failing star trying to remember how to burn. He touched her shoulder gently. "Can you hear me? I'm a medic. I'm here to help." Her eyes fluttered open for a heartbeat. Gold, impossibly bright even in the dust-choked dark. They focused on him with startling clarity, as if she were memorizing the shape of his face before consciousness slipped away. She whispered something soft, melodic, untranslatable, then went still. "Okay," Leon murmured, his voice dropping into that steady register he reserved for the critically wounded. "That's enough of that. You are not dying today." He tapped his comm. "Ray, I've got an unknown alien casualty in the collapsed sector. Critical condition. I need extraction assistance." Static crackled. Then Ray's stressed voice cut through. "We don't have time for Send whoever you can spare. Leon's voice remained steady, a stone in a river of chaos. I'm not leaving her. More static. Then, 5 minutes, hail. That's it. I'll take it. Leon jammed a length of rebar under the bulkhead and threw his entire weight into the leverage. The beam groaned, shifted, showering sparks and dust. Inch by agonizing inch, the gap widened. His muscles burned, tendons screaming protest. You're going to owe me for this, he muttered through gritted teeth. When there was finally enough space, he slid her out with the careful precision of someone handling glass that might shatter into starlight. Her body was heavier than expected, dense musculature beneath armor that hummed with dying energy. Up close, even blood-streaked and broken, she was breathtaking. Sharp-angled features, softened by exhaustion. A warrior sculpted from elegance and fire. Her chest rose in a thin, fragile breath. Leon immediately began field stabilization. Pressure sealant. Neural dampeners. His gloves trembled, but his hands knew the choreography by heart. One more life, he whispered to himself. One more impossible miracle. Ray arrived with 2 soldiers just as Leon finished sealing her abdominal wound. What in the 7 voids? One soldier breathed. Doc, do you know what that is? Leon didn't look up. A patient who needs immediate care. Ray crouched beside him, eyes widening as she took in the armor's details. Hail. This armor. That insignia. She paused. Do you have any idea who you just found? Someone with a pulse. Leon held out his hand. Hand me another stabilizer. Hail. Ray's voice dropped low, serious. She's not just anyone. That's Velari design. High tier. Possibly command class. Leon finally glanced up at the alien woman, her gold eyes now closed, her breathing shallow but steady. Rank doesn't matter, he said. She's bleeding. That's enough. Ray stared at him for a long moment, something between admiration and exasperation crossing her face. Then she helped him lift the unconscious warrior onto a stretcher, and together they carried her into a war that was about to change in ways none of them could imagine. The secondary fallback zone was a half-collapsed hydroponics warehouse that smelled like burned circuitry and rot, barely a step up from the ruins they'd just escaped. Leon carved out a triage corner in the only section with a mostly intact ceiling, laying patients in organized rows. Every motion was muscle memory and stubborn refusal to let anyone slip through his fingers into the dark. He placed the alien woman slightly apart. Not from prejudice, but practicality. His soldiers were already traumatized. Waking up next to a luminous, armored stranger might trigger panic or friendly fire. Her breathing was shallow but steady now, each rise of her chest faintly glowing beneath the cracked plates of her armor. Whatever energy source ran through that suit was dying, but not yet dead. Ray returned after barking orders at other squads, her voice dropping low when she reached Leon. Talk to me. What's her condition? Leon checked the alien's vitals again, his scanner painting data across his HUD. Pulse thready but consistent. Neural activity stabilizing. Internal bleeding contained. She's critical but stable. He paused. She needs proper surgery within 12 hours. And moving her again. He shook his head. Medically inadvisable. Possibly catastrophic. Ray swore under her breath. Command is losing their minds. The Velari haven't involved themselves in any conflict for centuries. Finding one of their warriors on a human battlefield is a diplomatic nightmare waiting to detonate. She's not a nightmare, Leon said evenly, adjusting in 4-line. She's a patient. Ray gave him a sharp look. Your ethics are admirable, Hale, but you don't understand the political weight of— No, Leon interrupted softly. You don't understand. She almost died alone under a collapsed building. I was there. Politics weren't. Ray exhaled long and slow, then left him to work. Leon spent the next hours moving in a haze, assessing injuries, administering stabilizers, cleaning wounds, resetting fractured limbs, stringing 4 lines together from scavenged tubing. His hands worked in steady rhythm, even as exhaustion clawed at the edges of his mind. But he kept glancing at her. At the alien woman who should not have been here. At the way her fingers twitched occasionally, as if gripping phantom weapons. At the faint glow beneath her skin, like bioluminescence trapped under frost. He'd treated dozens of alien species, but nothing like her. Sometime around the artificial night cycle, while Leon was suturing a corporal's leg laceration, a low hum rippled through the room. Not machinery, not enemy fire. A presence. He turned. The alien woman's breathing had shifted, deeper, more intentional. Her fingers flexed. Armor plates shifted with a metallic whisper. The air around her felt electrically charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. "Ray!" Leon called. "She's waking." Too late. Her eyes snapped open, gold, bright, sharp, ancient. Before Leon could speak, she moved. 1 second she was lying on the cot. The next, she had crossed the room in a blur of silver and shadow. Leon didn't even see her grab him. He just suddenly found his back against the wall, her hand wrapped around his throat, her body pinning him effortlessly. She moved with impossible speed for someone who'd nearly bled out hours ago. Her voice, when it came, was rough but commanding, each word cutting like a blade. "Designation." Leon forced words past the pressure on his windpipe. "I'm Leon. Leon Hale, human field medic." Her grip tightened, not enough to crush, but a warning. "Why have you interfered?" Not "why did you help me?" Not "who are you?" But interfered, as if saving her life had broken some sacred rule. Leon didn't lift his hands to fight her. Didn't resist at all. He simply met her eyes, ancient, furious, and wounded, and spoke with the same steady calm he used for panic patients. "You were dying," he said. There was no interference. Just medical necessity. Something flickered in her gaze. Confusion. Calculation. The faintest shard of disbelief. Then pain slammed into her. Leon saw it, the way her pupils dilated, the way her jaw clenched, the way her body trembled with effort. Her hand loosened. She stumbled, not far, never truly off balance, but enough that he could breathe again. Leon didn't rub his throat, didn't step back, didn't reach for a weapon. He just pointed to the cot. "You tore open your sutures," he said, voice low but firm. "Sit. Now." Her expression froze. A warrior who probably commanded legions, a being whose presence radiated the kind of authority that made generals bow. And he had just given her an order. Her eyes narrowed. Offended. Amused. Both. But after a long, tense silence, she moved back to the cot with deliberate, controlled precision. Leon approached slowly, keeping his movements visible and non-threatening. He knelt at her side, hands gentle but efficient as he inspected the reopened wound. "This will hurt," he warned. "It is irrelevant," she replied. "It still hurts," Leon said, preparing antiseptic. "Irrelevant doesn't mean non-existent." Her head tilted slightly, those tapered ears angling in a way that suggested she was analyzing him with the same precision she'd probably used to analyze battlefield terrain. "You speak softly," she murmured, watching his hands. "Even while threatened. This is unusual. For humans. For anyone." As Leon began cleaning the wound, she remained perfectly still. Not stoic, but disciplined, every muscle under razor control. "I'm going to need to resuture," he said. "Proceed." He worked in silence for a moment before asking, "Can you understand human medical terms?" "Yes." "And can you tell me if I'm doing anything that contradicts your species' physiology?" She seemed surprised by the question. "You ask my preference." Leon met her eyes. "It's your body. Even unconscious patients have a right to informed care." Another long pause. Then quietly, "Velari. Name Aranais." She paused. "Call me Aren." Leon nodded once. "Aren. Good. Now hold still." He finished the sutures, wrapped her abdomen in fresh bandaging, and finally sat back, exhaling a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Aren studied him with unsettling intensity. "Why did you save me?" "Because you were hurt," Leon said simply. "And I was there." "That is not sufficient." "It's the only reason that matters." Her gaze sharpened, as if he'd said something impossible. "Humans," she whispered, as though tasting the word for the first time. "You act without strategy, without thought for consequence." Leon chuckled softly. "On the contrary, I just prioritize the consequence of someone dying over the consequence of someone being politically inconvenient." Her gold eyes held his for a long, quiet beat. "You are deeply irrational," she said. "I've been told." Dawn on Marion looked no different from midnight, just more smoke drifting through ruined greenhouses and shattered skylights. Leon worked through it with the dull, grinding numbness of someone who'd gone 40 hours without real sleep and had forgotten what silence felt like. The triage zone throbbed with low groans, clattering instruments, and the distant concussive rhythm of artillery. Even so, Leon kept noticing small things his patients wouldn't. The way air vibrated faintly near the far corner. How certain shadows seemed to shift even when nothing moved. How soldiers whispered about something they couldn't explain. Crash assault squads approaching the medical area were being intercepted before they reached it. Not by humans. Not by drones. By someone moving with lethal efficiency. Leon didn't have time to investigate, but the pattern kept repeating enough to gnaw at the edge of his focus. Around noon cycle, Corporal Jansen arrived with shrapnel wounds and terrified eyes. Leon barely touched him before the man convulsed in shock, body thrashing, legs kicking against the cot, tearing out 4 lines. Leon tried to restrain him, murmuring steady reassurance, but Jansen's panic spiraled, muscles seizing uncontrollably. Then Aranais moved. She didn't rise so much as appear beside the cot, her presence sudden and commanding. One hand pressed lightly to Jansen's shoulder. She spoke a single line in perfect human trade standard, her voice low, melodic, edged with unshakable authority. To breathe is to live. Breathe, soldier. Jansen froze. His trembling stopped. His eyes, wild seconds ago, focused on her with stunned clarity. His breathing steadied instantly, as if her voice alone had rewired his nervous system. Leon stared at her. You speak our language. Her gold eyes flicked to him. I learned enough while unconscious. Your conversations are loud. That is not how linguistics works, Leon said. For Velari it is. She stepped back, silent again, posture relaxed but ready, every fiber of her being calibrated to react instantly to threat. When Leon finished treating Jansen's wounds, he turned to Aranais. Thank you. He impeded your work, she said simply. Such obstruction is tactically unsound. Leon actually laughed under his breath. That's a very Velari way of putting it. Aranais didn't smile, but the faint tilt of her ears suggested she might have wanted to. For the next hours, she didn't return to her cot. She didn't interfere, didn't take over, didn't criticize. She simply existed in the room, observing everything. Her gaze followed Leon everywhere he went. Whenever he knelt by a dying soldier, she watched. When he comforted someone screaming in pain, she watched. When he stitched, cauterized, whispered reassurance into frightened eyes, she watched. When he made a joke so a private wouldn't cry, she watched. It should have been unnerving. Instead, it felt like being measured, evaluated, as if she were calibrating him the same way she might calibrate a weapon. Except her expression wasn't cold. It was searching. No one had ever looked at him like that. Not even his commanding officers. Leon pretended not to notice, but he felt her attention like warmth at his back. By late cycle, casualties dwindled for the first time since sunrise. Leon leaned against a supply crate, exhaustion catching up hard. Aranais approached him, not silently this time, but with deliberate steps that didn't hide her presence. You are deteriorating, she observed. Thank you for the medical diagnosis, he said dryly. You require nutrient intake and rest. I'll sleep when people stop bleeding. Aranais studied him a moment longer. Explain something. Sure, Leon said, rubbing his face. You behave as though the wounded are of equal value. Because they are. This is not logical, she said. Your species prioritizes rank, political value, strategic importance. Yet you treat them all the same, even those your command deemed expectant. Leon stiffened. He hadn't told her about the expectant tags, the black markers that meant expected to die. Do not waste resources. How did you? I read the symbols, she said. Your medical codes are simple. She paused. To you, they are lives deprived of time, not lives deprived of worth. Leon looked down at his hands, stained with antiseptic and someone else's blood. If a person is alive, I try. It's that simple. No, Leon Hale, she said quietly. It is not simple. It is unprecedented. Her voice shifted, softened around the edges. Among Velari, mercy is rare. Assistance without demand is rarer still. We do not receive something for nothing. That's a miserable way to live, Leon said. It is our way, she replied. And I have never questioned it until now. The room seemed to still around them. Leon swallowed. Aranais, why were you alone on that battlefield? Her eyes lowered, not in shame, but something else. Something older, heavier. We were observing, she said. Your war. Your forces. Your collapse. Determining whether humanity warranted consideration. Consideration for what? Aranais didn't answer. Instead, she looked at him the way she had earlier, searching not his face, but something deeper. You asked for nothing, she said. No information. No concessions. No leverage. You saved me without knowledge of my identity or rank. Do you understand how rare this is? Leon shook his head. I'm a medic. That's the job. No, Aranais said. The job is triage, calculation, acceptable loss. You did not accept loss. You fought it. Her hand, steady, elegant, deceptively strong, touched the bandage on her side. When I woke, I tested you. You did not fear me. You did not attempt dominance. You were concerned. You were reopening your sutures, Leon said. I was concerned about the bleeding. Her expression flickered. Almost a smile. You speak truth even when it humiliates me, she murmured. Leon blinked. Wait. Did I just embarrass the most dangerous person I've ever treated? That depends, she said. Do you know who I am? Before Leon could answer, the warehouse shook violently. A blast rocked the outer wall. Soldiers scrambled, weapons raised. Ray stormed in, face pale. Hail, Aranais, we need to move. Enemy forces broke through the northern barricade. They're pushing toward this sector. Leon reached for his medbag. Aranais, however, stood straighter. Taller. Her posture shifted, not the poised readiness of a warrior, but something far more commanding. A presence that filled the room, like gravity increasing. When she spoke, her voice carried a resonance that seemed to vibrate the air itself. They will not reach this position. Ray stared at her. With respect, we're barely holding. They will not reach this position, Aranais repeated, eyes glowing like molten gold. Leon's heart kicked hard in his chest. Not from fear, but recognition. This was not how an ordinary soldier spoke. This was someone used to giving orders that shaped star systems. Someone for whom defeat was a choice, not a possibility. Someone whose identity he suddenly suspected was far more than Aranais. Before he could ask, she stepped past both of them, moving toward the warehouse exit with a grace that was not human. And when she crossed the threshold into the smoke-lit night, the air outside trembled as if bowing to her presence. Leon stared after her. Ray whispered, "What in the void is she?" Leon swallowed hard. "I think," he said quietly, "we're about to find out." Night on Marion 4 didn't bring darkness, only a deeper red smear across the horizon where the burning forests collapsed into ash. Leon stood at the warehouse entrance, watching Aranais stride into the open like someone who had never known fear, weakness, or the possibility of dying. Her steps were silent but impossibly certain, as if every inch of the battlefield belonged to her long before humans ever set foot here. Ray grabbed Leon's arm. "Hale, what is she doing?" Leon's throat fell dry. Something reckless. Or something inevitable. Crash units advanced in waves between the ruins, their mechanical exosuits glowing with hostile red. Plasma bolts carved burning arcs through the smoke. Each one came too close, too fast. Aranais didn't flinch. A plasma shot streaked toward her and vanished. Not blocked. Not dodged. Erased. The bolt blinked out of existence a meter from her chest, as if reality itself refused to permit it to strike her. Leon felt the hair rise along his arms. What was that? Ray whispered, "I don't know." Aranais raised her hand. Her armor flickered, plates shifting, sealing, reshaping themselves into a form far more complete than before. Lines of light swirled across her forearms, etching symbols older than anything in human archives. When she spoke, her voice changed, no longer merely commanding. Now it rang with something ancient, ceremonial, absolute. Valen too. The ground shook. Leon didn't know the language, but he felt the meaning in his bones. We begin. In a single fluid motion, Aranais leapt forward, so fast that I struggled to track her. She moved like liquid force, like gravity with purpose, weaving through enemy fire with inhuman precision. Crash exosuits tried to target her. They failed. She was simply not there by the time their sensors locked on. 2 soldiers beside Leon gasped as she carved through the first wave, striking with open hands. No weapons, just lethal precision. Each touch of her palm disrupted something fundamental in the enemy armor, tearing power cores apart, collapsing hydraulic joints, slicing through plating that should have been invulnerable. Every motion was a proclamation. You do not touch what is mine to protect. Leon watched, stunned, heart pounding. He had known she was strong. He had not known she was unstoppable. Ray whispered, "She's a one-woman army." Leon swallowed. "No, she's something else." Before the captain could ask, Aranais' voice echoed through all comms at once, hijacking human, crash, and civilian frequencies effortlessly. "Human units, you will not engage. Remain behind the defensive perimeter. This battle is no longer yours. Her tone was not arrogant. It was factual. Ray stared at Leon. She just told an entire war zone to stand down. Leon exhaled shakily. I think she expects to win alone. And she did. Crash forces executed tactical maneuvers, encircling patterns, coordinated strikes, but nothing mattered. Aranais was already 2 moves ahead of everything they attempted. She fought with the precision of an algorithm and the fury of a dying star. And slowly, impossibly, the battlefield went quiet. Silence. An impossible silence. Crash units retreated. Not tactically. Not strategically. They fled. Leon didn't realize he'd been holding his breath until his lungs demanded air. When Aranais returned, the night itself seemed to fold around her. Her armor dimmed from its battle-sharp brilliance. Her steps were steady but heavier now, as though the weight of what she'd done caught up only after danger passed. She stopped a few feet from Leon, her gold eyes, once blazing with power, now softened. Almost human. Your position is secure, she said quietly. Leon stepped closer without thinking. Aranais, who are you really? For a moment, her expression didn't change. Then her shoulders lifted, not in pride, but in resignation. Acceptance. As if she had hoped foolishly to delay this truth. She looked slightly past him at the wounded soldiers, the battered warehouse, the chaos of the human camp. Then directly into Leon's eyes. I am Aranais of Aaris, she said at last. High Commander of the Velari Ascendancy. A pause. First Sovereign Heir to the Velari throne. The words hit the air with the gravity of a supernova. Ray swore under her breath. Soldiers nearby froze. A medic dropped an instrument. Leon stayed still, steady as a heartbeat. Your royalty, he said, voice low. No, Aranais corrected softly. Royalty can be ignored. Her gaze sharpened. What I am cannot. Leon absorbed that, chest tightening. Why were you on the ground alone? Because I sought to understand your species. Her voice was quiet now, intimate beneath the authority. To observe from afar is insufficient. You see truth up close, in the wounded, in the desperate, in the dying. Her eyes softened further. And then I saw you. Silence. Leon barely breathed. You defied every expectation, Aranais continued. You risked yourself for me, without knowing what I was. You treated me not as sovereign or threat, but as someone worthy of care. She stepped closer, close enough that Leon felt the warmth of her skin through the cool air. Velari do not comprehend such things, she said. But I want to. Leon swallowed. You don't owe me anything. On the contrary, she murmured. My people owe you everything. Before he could process that, every comm device in the entire region blared simultaneously. A single sigil appeared on every screen, the Velari crest. Then a voice, hers, echoing through the sky with impossible authority. This is High Commander Aranais of the Velari Ascendancy. All crash forces will withdraw from Marion 4 immediately. Failure to comply will be met with eradication. Leon's heart stopped. Ray whispered, She just declared sovereign intervention. Aranais' gaze never left Leon. We do not leave debts unpaid. And with that, she deactivated the transmission, leaving the battlefield, the soldiers, and Leon in stunned silence, as if the galaxy itself had shifted, as if everything he thought he understood about his role in this war had been rewritten in an instant. The next 24 hours unfolded like a fever dream, except fevers made more sense. Fevers at least followed biological rules. What was happening around Leon followed no rules, human or otherwise. Crash forces vanished from entire northern hemisphere within hours. Not retreating, evaporating, as if every enemy commander received the same silent, terrible realization they were trespassing on territory claimed by a Velari high commander. Human command didn't celebrate. They panicked. Reports poured into the triage zone. Entire crash battalions abandoning fortified positions. Velari warships appearing in orbit, silent and motionless, but unmistakably present. Human generals arguing whether they should surrender to the Velari immediately or pretend everything was fine. Meanwhile, the triage unit finally had access to real supplies. Velari medships began landing in surgical silence, delivering stacked crates of medical nanogel, energy stabilizers, and pain inhibitors that put human pharmacology to shame. Leon opened one container and nearly cried. Nearly. He didn't have time for the luxury of crying in front of 20 wounded soldiers. Aranais observed him quietly from across the room, armored again, but with the plates dimmed to a diplomatic shimmer rather than a battle flare. Where she stood, the air felt subtly warmer, as if the atmosphere recognized her presence. Leon carried 2 fresh stabilizers toward a wounded sergeant. On his way, Aran's eyes tracked him. Not possessive, not predatory, but watchful in a way that felt protective. Ray approached Leon while he worked. "You're aware she hasn't left the camp, right?" Leon tightened a brace around the sergeant's thigh. "I assume she's supervising the Velari med teams." Ray shook her head. "No. Those teams came and went. She stayed. She's only moved when you moved." Leon paused mid-motion. "That can't be right." "Oh, it's right," Ray said, rubbing her forehead. "She's like your enormous, ancient, heavily armored shadow. And every ranking officer within 100 kilometers is losing their minds." Leon finished with the patient before answering. "She's just keeping an eye on the situation." Ray lifted a brow. "She's keeping an eye on you. Specifically. Exclusively. Comically. Obviously." Leon opened his mouth. Closed it. "Hell," Ray said. "That doesn't make any sense." "Exactly," Ray hissed. "Nothing makes sense anymore. You used to be the least dramatic person I commanded. Now you're apparently romantically bonded to a living nuclear deterrent." Leon nearly dropped a tray of instruments. "It's not. There's no. Ray, I'm a field medic." She's literally," the captain's expression softened just slightly. "Someone whose life you saved." Leon didn't answer because the truth sat too close to something dangerous inside his chest. By late cycle, stabilizations were finally under control. Leon moved toward the hydroponics doorway to step outside for a breath of air that didn't smell like melted polymer. Aran followed. He didn't hear her approach. He only felt her presence before she spoke. "You are limping." "I'm exhausted," Leon said. "And my boots hate me." Her ears angled slightly. He now recognized that as mild disapproval. "You have not eaten in 18 hours. And I will. After the next vitals check." Aran stepped in front of him, blocking his path. "Eat, Leon." Her voice wasn't commanding. It was something far more compelling. He sighed. "Fine. Something small." She handed him a Velari ration sphere without looking away from him. He accepted it, bit into it, immediately regretted every culinary decision he'd ever made. "It tastes like compressed sadness," he managed. Aran's ears lifted faintly. Velari laughter, he suspected. "It is nutritionally perfect." "That's part of the crime." He took another bite anyway. She watched him like she was studying an impossible equation. When he finished, she stepped closer. Close enough that if he inhaled too deeply, he'd breathe in her scent, something crisp and metallic, like cold wind over starlit cliffs. "Leon Hale," she said softly, "do you understand the magnitude of what you did?" Leon wiped his hands on his trousers. "I treated a patient. You altered the course of an interstellar conflict. That wasn't my intention. Intent does not diminish outcome." She paused. "You saved me." Leon met her eyes. "You saved everyone." Her gaze sharpened, something warm blooming behind the molten gold. "I intervened because a debt was owed." "You don't owe me anything," Leon said firmly. Aran tilted her head, as if peering directly into the core of him. "To the Velari, life debt is sacred. Eternal." Leon swallowed. "I don't want," she stepped closer. "It is not a burden. It is a recognition." "Of what?" "Of what you—" Leon exhaled shakily. "And what do you think I am?" Her voice softened. "Someone who sees worth where others see cost. Someone who protects without demanding return. Someone unprecedented." Leon looked away. "I'm just doing my job." "But you're doing far more than that. And your refusal to acknowledge it is." She exhaled through her nose. "Frustrating." His lips twitched. "You're frustrated with me." "Yes." "Good. Now you know how I feel when you reopen your sutures." A faint, startled sound escaped her. Almost a laugh. Almost. The silence between them shifted. No longer tense, but charged, delicate, on the edge of something undefined. Before either could speak again, the calm line crackled. "Field Medic Leon Hale," a nervous operator said. You have an incoming direct communication request. Priority designation Sovereign." Leon froze. "Sovereign." Aran, looking at him, expression unreadable but softer, said, "That request is from my council." "For me?" "Yes." Leon blinked. "Why?" Aran's answer was quiet. Because the Ascendancy wishes to understand the human who changed the decisions of a throne. Leon's mouth went dry. Aren, did you tell them about me? I informed them of what matters, she said simply. Everything. The communication room had once been a classroom. Faded diagrams of alien flora still clung to the cracked walls, their cheerful colors dimmed by soot. The hollow projector in the center flickered with a malfunctioning light strip, as if protesting the sudden importance forced upon it. Leon stood before it, hands braced on the console, pulse thundering louder than the distant artillery. Behind him, through the open doorway, Aren waited in the hall, not hovering, but present, anchoring like a silent guardian whose very existence bent danger away. The hollow projector blinked to life. 5 figures materialized in shimmering light, tall, elegant, their armor woven with the same liquid metal patterns as Aren's, though less ornate. Their gazes were sharp, old, and heavy with authority. Human Leon Hale, the central figure said, an elder with silver hair braided in interlocking rings. Her voice was resonant and clear. We are the Ascendant Council of the Velari. You stand before us under the protection of High Commander Aranais. Leon straightened instinctively. I understand. Do you? Another counselor asked, narrowing his eyes. Your actions have altered the trajectory of 2 species. Understanding seems unlikely. Leon tried to keep his tone steady. I didn't intend to alter anything. A ripple of surprise passed through the council, as if he'd said something incomprehensible. The elder continued. We have studied your medical logs, your recorded actions on the battlefield, and the reports from High Commander Aranais. Leon's stomach tightened. Aren had said she told him everything, but hearing it confirmed made the weight of it settle deeper. Your conduct challenges our philosophy, the elder said. You expend effort without demand for benefit. You protect life even when tactically disadvantageous. You act without calculating return. Leon frowned. That's just the oath of a medic. Yet most beings do not follow it, the counselor said sharply. Not under fire. Not at personal risk. Not for strangers. And certainly not for one of us. Leon hesitated. One of you. The counselors exchanged glances, sharp, silent, meaningful. The youngest looking among them leaned forward. Did High Commander Aranais reveal her full identity to you? Leon nodded slowly. First Sovereign Heir. The council fell silent. Then the elder spoke with a voice that made the hollow projector tremble. She is not merely heir. Leon blinked. She is the heart-bonded sovereign, the elder said, each word deliberate. Chosen by ancient lineage, carrier of the shard mind, voice of the Ascendancy, the last living vessel of our oldest law. Leon felt his lungs stop functioning. Aren was not royalty, not just commander. She was something older, deeper, woven into the structure of her people. She is bound to the Ascendancy by blood and vow, another counselor added. And now, through you, by debt. Leon exhaled shakily. I didn't ask for that. That, the elder said, is precisely why it formed. A quiet hum vibrated in the doorway, Aren's presence intensifying, as if she sensed the direction of the conversation. The elder's tone softened. She has not formed a bond in over a century. She has not trusted another being on any battlefield for twice that. She has not allowed any creature to touch her without armor in longer than you can comprehend. Leon felt heat rise in his face. I wasn't thinking about any of that. I saw someone injured. I helped her. And that, the elder said gently, is the part of you that she values most. Leon's throat tightened. The youngest counselor sighed. Human, you must understand. Velari do not make personal attachments. We do not bond. We do not tether our existence to another's. For one such as her, he paused, searching for words, is catastrophic, or transcendent, is never neutral. Leon's breath slowed. What are you asking me? The elder looked directly into him. Do you accept the connection that has formed? Not its political implications, not its strategic advantages, but the truth of it. Leon swallowed hard. And what truth is that? That the High Commander has chosen you, she said, not as subordinate, not as asset, but as equal, as someone whose presence alters who she is. Leon's pulse hammered in his ears. I don't know if I'm worthy of that. Aren spoke from the doorway. You are. The counselors turned, their holograms shifting to acknowledge her. Aren stepped into the room, armor dimmed, expression steady, but her eyes held something fragile. She moved to Leon's side. Not in front, not behind, beside. An equal position. Your evaluation is complete, Aranais said to the council. He is, as I said, and you are certain, the elder interrupted. Yes. Then the Ascendancy recognizes the bond, the elder declared. Leon nearly stumbled. Bond. Aranais' gaze flicked to him, something warm and fierce in her eyes. A life debt that evolves beyond obligation. A connection that influences command. A tie that shapes decisions. Leon blinked. Between us. Yes. That's a lot. Aranais' lips softened, almost into a smile. Yes. For both of us. The eldest counselor spoke again. Human Leon Hale, the consequences of rejecting this bond would be significant. For her. For you. For our alliance. Leon inhaled. Exhaled. Spoke with quiet honesty. I don't reject it. Aranais' breath caught, so subtle that only he noticed. Leon continued. I don't understand it yet. I don't know what it means. But I don't reject it. Something bright and unguarded flickered across Aranais' face. A crack in the perfect composure of a warrior empress. The council bowed their heads as one. Then the pact is sealed. The holograms vanished, leaving Leon and Aranais alone in the dim, cracked room. Silence expanded between them, not heavy, but vast, like two worlds adjusting their gravity around each other. Aranais stepped closer. You spoke truth. So did you. Her gold eyes softened. You are not overwhelmed. Oh, I'm absolutely overwhelmed, Leon said. But I'm still here. Aranais' chest rose with something that wasn't quite relief, but close. You remain, even faced with all that I am. Leon nodded. Because I saw who you were before I knew any of that. A long moment passed. Then Aranais lifted her hand. Slowly, gently, she touched her forehead to his. The same gesture she'd given him once on the battlefield, but now it burned with meaning, connection, gratitude, something deeper he didn't yet have a name for. Her voice was barely a whisper. Leon Hale, you altered more than a war. You altered me. He closed his eyes, resting his forehead against hers, letting the warmth of her skin steady him. I'm just glad you lived, he murmured. That, she said softly, is why this bond formed. A soft chime echoed outside, the transport waiting to return them to the surface where the aftermath of war awaited. But here, in this small, shattered classroom, something new had taken root. Something that would grow into treaties and alliances, into protocols rewritten and boundaries redrawn. But right now, it was simply two beings who had found something unexpected in the ruins of a dying world, recognition. The kind that only comes when someone sees past armor and rank and species to the truth beneath. Leon pulled back slightly, meeting her eyes. What happens now? Aranais considered that, her expression thoughtful. Now, we rebuild. Your people. Mine. Together, if the Ascendancy agrees. And if they don't? Her smile was small but genuine. Then I make them agree. I am, after all, the heart-bonded sovereign. Leon laughed, a short, tired sound that was nevertheless real. Is that how it works? You just decide. When the decision is correct. Yes. She paused. Though I have learned recently that some of the most important decisions are made without thinking. Without calculation. From a certain irrational medic. Precisely. They walked together toward the exit, where Ray waited with barely concealed impatience and no small amount of awe. The captain saluted, an awkward gesture given that Aranais technically outranked every human in the system. Aranais returned it with perfect form, then added quietly, Captain Ray, your medic is under my protection. Any who threaten him threaten the Ascendancy itself. Ray's eyes widened. I understood, High Commander. Good. Aranais glanced at Leon. He has a tendency toward self-sacrifice. I expect you to prevent this when I am not present. Despite everything, the exhaustion, the chaos, the sheer impossibility of the last 72 hours, Leon felt himself smile. You're assigning me a babysitter. I am ensuring your survival, Aranais corrected. There is a difference. Ray cleared her throat. For what it's worth, Doc, I've been trying to do that for 3 years. Good luck, Commander. I do not require luck, Aranais said. I am exceptionally persuasive. As they stepped out into the smoke-hazed afternoon, Leon felt the weight of watching eyes. Human soldiers who had witnessed impossible things. Velari warriors who had followed their commander into a human war zone for reasons they were only beginning to understand. And somewhere high above, in the silent warships holding position in orbit, an entire civilization waited to see what would come next. Leon had spent his entire career in triage, making impossible decisions, choosing who lived and who died based on calculations that haunted him every night. But this decision, the one he'd made in a collapsed building under fire, hadn't been a calculation at all. It had been instinct, reflex, the fundamental belief that every life mattered, regardless of who was doing the measuring. He glanced at Aranais, walking beside him with that perfect, controlled grace. She caught his look and raised one elegant eyebrow in silent question. "Just thinking," Leon said. About how I'm going to explain this in my after-action report." Aranais' lips quirked. "Write this: treated alien casualty. Accidentally influenced interstellar diplomacy. Request additional medical supplies and possibly a vacation." Leon laughed, actually laughed, the sound foreign after days of nothing but screams and explosions. "You have a sense of humor." "I contain multitudes," she said dryly, "as you are discovering." The transport hummed to life, its engines cutting through the battlefield's ambient noise. As they climbed aboard, Leon took one last look at the triage zone, at the patients he'd fought so hard to keep alive, at the medical equipment that had been stretched beyond all reasonable limits, at the blood-stained floor that told the story of every impossible choice he'd made. He thought about the private he'd saved first, the one who'd told him they wouldn't make it out. The man was sleeping now, stable, alive against all odds. Leon thought about Corporal Jansen, whose panic Aranais had stopped with nothing but her voice and presence. He thought about all the others, human, alien, soldier, and civilian alike, who had survived because someone decided they were worth saving. And he thought about Aranais, dying alone under rubble, her gold eyes memorizing his face, as if he were the last thing worth seeing. "You're doing it again," Aranais said quietly, settling into the seat beside him. "Doing what?" "Thinking too much about what could have been lost instead of what was saved." Leon looked at her. "Is that a Velari observation?" "No," she said. "That is an Aranais observation. There is a difference." The transport lifted off, carrying them away from the ruins of Fate 9, away from a hydroponics warehouse that had become a fortress, away from the battlefield that had changed everything. Ray settled across from them, checking her datapad with the focused intensity of someone trying very hard not to stare at the alien sovereign and the medic who had somehow become the hinge point of galactic history. Finally, she couldn't help herself. "So," Ray said carefully, "what's the protocol here? Do I salute every time you two enter a room? Do I announce you? Should I learn Velari?" Aranais considered that. No, and only if you wish to. I am not here as sovereign. I am here as..." She paused, searching for the right word. Leon supplied it quietly. "A patient who got better." Something warm crossed Aranais' expression. "Yes, that. But they all knew it was more than that. Much more." The comm crackled human command, desperate for updates, for explanations, for anything that would help them understand how their losing war had suddenly become a potential alliance. Ray answered, her voice taking on that crisp professional tone she used when dealing with officers who outranked her. Leon tuned out. He was too tired for politics, too wrung out for grand strategy. All he wanted was sleep, a shower, and maybe a meal that didn't taste like compressed sadness. Aranais' hand found his, not a dramatic gesture, just a simple touch, her fingers curling around his palm, with surprising gentleness for someone who could tear through battle armor with her bare hands. "Sleep," she said quietly. "I will watch." "You need rest too," Leon protested, but his eyes were already closing. "I am Velari. We require less." "That's not fair." "Life rarely is," she said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "But sometimes it compensates with unexpected gifts." Leon wanted to ask what she meant, but exhaustion dragged him down into darkness, the first real sleep he'd had in days, dreamless and complete, his hand still held in hers. When he woke hours later, the transport had landed at Forward Base Tarsus, a sprawling military complex that looked almost untouched by the war. Almost. The burn scars were there if you knew where to look, patched walls, replaced sections, the too new shine of emergency repairs. Aranais was exactly where she'd been, watching over him with those ancient gold eyes, her armor reflecting the harsh artificial lighting of the landing bay. "You didn't sleep," Leon said, his voice rough. "I kept watch. As promised." "Aranais, do not argue. You needed rest. I provided it." She stood, offering her hand to help him up. Leon took it, marveling at the casual strength in her grip. Outside, a delegation waited. Human officials in pressed uniforms, military brass with chests full of medals, and, most surprising, 3 more Velari, their armor marking them as high-ranking diplomats. The air felt charged, electric with the weight of what was about to unfold. Ray muttered under her breath as they disembarked. Well, document. You wanted to save lives. Congratulations. You might have saved an entire species. 2 species, Aren corrected, overhearing. Possibly more, depending on how this unfolds. Leon stepped out into the landing bay, Aren at his side, and felt the full weight of hundreds of eyes turned toward them. The human delegation looked nervous. The Velari looked curious. And everyone else looked completely overwhelmed. A human general, 3 stars, graying at the temples, jaw like carved granite, stepped forward. High Commander Aranais. We weren't expecting. Aran inclined her head with perfect diplomatic grace. General Morrison, the circumstances were unprecedented. My presence became necessary. Of course. We're honored. Truly. Morrison's eyes flicked to Leon, confused. And this is... Lieutenant Leon Hale, Aren said, her voice carrying that subtle edge of steel that meant the next words were not negotiable. Field medic. The human responsible for my survival and, consequently, this diplomatic contact. He speaks with my authority in all matters concerning our people's alliance. The silence that followed could have crushed planets. Leon stared at Aren. I what? She looked at him calmly. You speak with my authority. Did I stutter? I'm a medic. I don't know anything about. You know what matters, Aren said. The value of life, the cost of war, the necessity of mercy. That is more qualified than most diplomats I have encountered. One of the Velari diplomats stepped forward, an elegant female with silver markings that seemed to move across her skin like living tattoos. She spoke in their language, melodic and complex, but Leon's translator implant caught the gist. High Commander, this is highly irregular. Aren responded in kind, her voice carrying absolute authority. The translator provided, irregular circumstances demand irregular solutions. He saved my life when calculations suggested abandonment. That is the foundation upon which our new relationship with humanity will be built. The diplomat bowed, accepting the decree even if she didn't fully agree. General Morrison cleared his throat. Perhaps we should move this to a more secure location? The situation is delicate. The situation is simple, Aren said. The crash invaded human space. You were losing. I observed. Lieutenant Hale demonstrated that humanity possesses qualities the Velari had not recognized: compassion, self-sacrifice, and a stubborn refusal to accept defeat even when logic suggests otherwise. She paused. These are traits we value. Therefore, the Ascendancy proposes an alliance. Morrison looked like someone had just handed him the keys to the universe while simultaneously telling him his house was on fire. An alliance. With the Velari Ascendancy. Correct. That would change everything. Yes, Aren agreed. That is generally what alliances do. Ray whispered to Leon, she's terrifying. I know, Leon whispered back. It's kind of impressive. Aren's ears twitched. She'd heard them. The faint curve of her lips suggested she was pleased. As the delegation began moving toward the command center, Aren leaned closer to Leon, her voice dropping to something meant only for him. You will need to be present for these negotiations. I really don't think, Leon Hale. She stopped walking, turning to face him fully. You altered my perspective on entire species. Your voice matters. Not because of rank or position, but because of who you are. Do not diminish that. He met her eyes, those impossible gold eyes that had memorized his face while dying, that had watched him work with such intensity, that now looked at him with something that might have been respect or might have been something deeper. I'm not a diplomat, he said quietly. Neither was I once, Aren replied. I was simply a warrior. Then I became something more because circumstances demanded it. You are a medic. But you are also the human who showed me that mercy is not weakness. That life has value beyond tactical calculation. That sometimes the most important decision is the one made without thinking. She paused. You are precisely what this moment needs. Leon felt something shift inside him, not confidence exactly, but acceptance. He'd spent years in triage, making impossible choices, carrying the weight of every life he couldn't save. Maybe that experience, that perspective, was exactly what these negotiations needed. Someone who understood the cost. Someone who'd looked into dying eyes and promised them tomorrow. Someone who knew, bone deep, that every choice mattered. Okay, he said finally. I'll try. Aran's smile was small but genuine. That is all anyone can do. The negotiations lasted 3 days. 3 days of careful diplomacy, strategic discussions, and the slow, painful process of two vastly different civilizations trying to find common ground. Leon sat in rooms filled with people who outranked him by orders of magnitude, and somehow, impossibly, his words carried weight. When generals talked about acceptable casualties, he reminded them those casualties had names, families, futures. When diplomats suggested compromises that would sacrifice outlying colonies, he asked them which of their own children they'd be willing to give up for strategic advantage. When Velari counselors proposed efficiency-based protocols, he explained why humans couldn't think that way, why they wouldn't. And Aren supported him every time, her presence beside him like a declaration. This human speaks truth. Listen. Slowly, impossibly, a framework emerged. The Velari would provide military support against the Crash invasion. Humans would offer cultural exchange, resource sharing, and access to territories that would benefit both species. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was a beginning. On the third night, exhausted and wrung out, Leon found himself alone on an observation deck overlooking the base. The stars burned overhead, indifferent and eternal. He was so tired he fell hollow. Aren found him there, of course she did. She always seemed to know where he was. You should be sleeping, she said, moving to stand beside him at the viewport. So should you. I told you. Velari require less rest. That still doesn't make it 0. She tilted her head, acknowledgement that he had a point. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars. Finally, Aren spoke. The treaty framework is acceptable to the Ascendancy Council. Pending final approval, it will be ratified within a lunar cycle. That's good, Leon said. You were instrumental in its formation. I mostly just reminded people that other people matter. Yes, Aren said quietly. You did. Repeatedly. Without compromise. It was, she paused, searching for words. Illuminating. Leon glanced at her. You keep saying things like that. As if basic compassion is some kind of revelation. For my people? It is. She turned to face him fully. We have spent millennia perfecting efficiency, strategy, control. We forgot why those things mattered. We forgot that life has value beyond its tactical utility. Her hand reached out, fingers brushing his cheek with surprising gentleness. You reminded me. Not through argument or philosophy, but through action. You saved me because I was dying. Not because of who I was or what I could offer, but simply because I was alive, and that mattered to you. Leon's breath caught. Aren, I am returning to the Ascendancy homeworld tomorrow, she said, to present the treaty to the full council and begin implementation. Something cold settled in Leon's chest. Oh, you will accompany me. He blinked. What? As humanity's liaison, the council has requested it specifically. Aren's expression softened. As have I. I'm a field medic, Leon protested. I don't know anything about. You know everything that matters, Aren interrupted gently. And you are the human I trust most. The human the Ascendancy has agreed to trust. Your presence is not negotiable. She paused. Unless you refuse, I will not force this upon you. Leon looked at her, really looked at her. At the warrior who had crossed a battlefield alone to understand his species. At the sovereign who had intervened in a war because one medic had shown her compassion. At the woman who watched him work with those searching gold eyes, and somehow saw something worth saving. What would I be doing there? He asked quietly. Speaking, advising, helping two peoples understand each other. She paused. Being yourself, which is apparently revolutionary. Despite everything, Leon smiled. You make it sound simple. It is. And it is not. Aren's hand remained against his cheek. I will not lie to you, Leon Hale. The Velari homeworld is vastly different from anything you have experienced. The protocols are complex. The council is demanding. Many will question your presence, your authority, your worth. That's not exactly encouraging. But I will be there, she said. And to challenge you is to challenge me. No one will do so lightly. Her thumb brushed across his cheekbone. You saved my life. I intend to spend considerable time ensuring yours remains equally intact. Leon's heart kicked hard. That's a life debt, Aren said. Yes, but also. She trailed off, something uncertain crossing her expression, perhaps the first truly vulnerable look he'd seen on her face. Also something more. Something I do not have words for yet. Something that frightens me more than any battlefield. Leon understood. He felt it too, that strange pull, that connection that had formed in blood and fire and quiet moments watching each other work. It defied logic, defied politics, defied every reasonable boundary between their species. And yet it was there, undeniable as gravity. "I'll come with you," he said. Aren's expression transformed, relief, joy, something fierce and bright. "Yes. Yes. Someone needs to make sure you don't reopen your sutures." Her laugh was soft but genuine. "I am completely healed." "So you say? I'll need to verify that. Medically." She stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin, could see the faint luminescence beneath her surface that marked her as something other, something more. "You may verify whatever you wish," she said quietly. "I am, after all, your patient." "Former patient. Is a life debt ever truly discharged?" "I told you you don't owe me. This is not about debt," Aran interrupted, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "This is about choice. My choice. To stay near you. To know you. She stopped, shaking her head slightly. "To explore this unprecedented thing between us." Leon's breath felt shallow. What if the council objects? Then they will learn that their heart-bonded sovereign makes her own decisions regarding matters of personal significance. Aren's smile was small but fierce. "I am not a figurehead, Leon Hale. I am power incarnate, and I choose to direct that power toward understanding what you have awakened in me." Before Leon could respond, before he could even process what she was saying, alarm screamed across the base. Emergency lighting bathed everything in red. Aren's entire demeanor shifted in an instant, from vulnerable to lethal, her armor plates snapping to full combat readiness. Ray's voice crackled over Leon's comm, "All medical personnel to emergency stations. Crash forces have breached the southern perimeter. Mass casualties incoming. Hale, we need you now." Leon was already moving, muscle memory overriding thought. Aran moved with him, her presence at his back solid and unwavering. "This attack is retaliatory," she said, her voice carrying tactical certainty. "They know of my presence here. They seek to damage the Alliance before it can form. Can you stop them?" "I already am." She touched something at her wrist, and suddenly the air filled with her voice, broadcast on every frequency, cutting through the chaos like a blade through smoke. "Crash forces. This is High Commander Aranais of the Velari Ascendancy. You are engaging a protected zone under sovereign decree. Withdraw immediately or face eradication." For a heartbeat, nothing changed. Then something vast moved in the sky above, Velari warships, previously hidden, now revealing themselves in their full, terrible glory. They hung in the atmosphere like predatory gods, weapons charging with light that turned night into day. The message was clear: leave or learn why the Velari had remained unconquered for millennia. Leon ran toward the medical bay, Aran keeping pace effortlessly beside him. Around them, soldiers scrambled for defensive positions. Weapons fire lit the distance. And somewhere in the chaos, people were bleeding, dying, needing him. The medical bay was already chaos when they arrived, wounded streaming in, medics working with frantic efficiency, the familiar symphony of trauma care at its most desperate. Leon didn't hesitate. He dove straight into it, hands already reaching for supplies, mind already cataloging injuries by severity. A corporal with a sucking chest wound. A private with her leg half blown off. A civilian, where had the civilian come from, with burns across 60% of his body? Leon worked, and as he worked, he felt Aren's presence behind him. Not interfering, not commanding. Just there, solid and real, watching him do what he did best. Saving lives. One impossible decision at a time. And above them, through the ceiling and the chaos and the smoke-filled sky, Velari warships held position like promises written in starlight. This base is protected. These people matter. Touch them and face the consequences. The crash forces apparently decided that discretion was the better part of continued existence. They withdrew. Slowly at first, then in a scramble, and finally in full retreat as Velari interceptors made it abundantly clear that mercy had its limits. By the time dawn broke, real dawn, not the false firelight of burning cities, the base was secure. Exhausted, battered, but alive. Leon finished stabilizing his last patient, a young soldier who would lose her arm but keep her life, and finally allowed himself to stop, to breathe, to feel the weight of the last 6 hours settle onto his shoulders like lead. Aranais was still there. She hadn't moved from her position, hadn't left to direct fleets or negotiate with human command. She had simply stayed, watching him work with those intense gold eyes, bearing silent witness to every life he fought for. "You didn't have to stay," Leon said quietly, stripping off blood-soaked gloves. "Yes," Aranais said. "I did. The warships are commanded by competent subordinates. They did not require my direct oversight." She moved closer. "You, however, required protection, so I provided it." Leon looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something in her expression that made his chest tighten. Not just respect, not just gratitude, something deeper, warmer, more dangerous. "High Commander," a Velari officer said, appearing at the entrance with a bow. "The Council is requesting immediate communication regarding the attack." "Tell them I will respond when appropriate," Aranais said without looking away from Leon. "High Commander, they were quite insistent. Then they may practice patience." Her voice carried absolute authority. "I am occupied with matters of equal importance." The officer hesitated, clearly torn between protocol and survival instinct. Survival won. He bowed again and left. Leon exhaled a shaky laugh. "You just dismissed the ruling council of your civilization to stay here with me." "Yes." "Why?" "Because," Aranais said simply, "they are not currently covered in someone else's blood after saving dozens of lives. You are, and I wish to ensure you are uninjured before I turn my attention elsewhere." She reached out, her fingers brushing his temple, where something had apparently split the skin without him noticing. "You are bleeding." "It's nothing." "Nothing is not the appropriate medical assessment." "I'm fine, Aranais." "Leon Hale." Her voice dropped, became something softer, more intimate. "For once, allow someone else to care for you." And somehow, that broke something in him. Some wall he'd maintained through 3 tours, through countless impossible decisions, through all the deaths he couldn't prevent and the lives he barely saved. He felt a crack, felt exhaustion and emotion flood through, and he swayed. Aranais caught him, of course she did, her arms solid and sure, lowering him gently to sit on a supply crate. "When did you last sleep?" she asked. "I slept on the transport." "That was 30 hours ago." "Has it been 30 hours?" "Yes." She knelt before him, her armor dimming to something softer, less martial. "You cannot save lives if you do not preserve your own." "I'm not the one in danger." "You are in danger of collapse," Aranais said firmly, "which I will not permit. Therefore you will rest. I will watch over you. This is not negotiable." Leon wanted to argue. He really did. But exhaustion made his bones feel hollow, and Aranais' hands were gentle as she cleaned the cut on his temple, and somewhere in the process of her tending to him for once, his eyes closed. He thought he felt her lift him. Impossible, he was too heavy, but she carried him anyway to a cot in the medical bay's recovery room, laying him down with surprising tenderness. "Sleep," she murmured, and her hand brushed through his hair once, a gesture so unexpected and so human that it made his heart ache. "I will be here when you wake." And she was. When Leon surfaced from sleep some unknowable time later, the first thing he saw was Aranais, seated beside his cot, her armor reflecting the dim emergency lighting. She wasn't looking at a tactical display or communicating with her fleet. She was simply sitting there, watching him, waiting. "How long?" Leon asked. 6 hours, Aranais said. "The base is secure. Casualties are being treated. The Council has been informed that I will speak with them when you are functional." Leon pushed himself upright. "You're putting off the Council for me." Repeatedly, Aranais agreed. "Is becoming habit." "Aranais, do not argue." She stood, moving to pour water from a container someone had left. "Here. Drink." He took the water, drank, felt marginally more human. "Thank you." "You are welcome." She sat back down, her posture relaxing slightly. "The treaty negotiators wish to expedite the timeline. They suggest we depart for the Velari homeworld within 2 days." Leon's stomach did something complicated. 2 days. That soon? Too soon. There was something uncertain in her voice, something almost vulnerable. "Tell me truthfully, Leon Hale, are you agreeing to this because it is politically necessary, or because you actually wish to come?" Leon set down the water, meeting her eyes. I'm agreeing because you asked me to. Because I want to understand your people the way you try to understand mine. And because he stopped. She leaned forward slightly. Because I want to know you better, he admitted quietly. Not High Commander Aranais. Not the heart-bonded sovereign. Just Aren, if that's even possible. Her expression transformed, something bright and fierce, and achingly hopeful. It is possible, she said. Difficult, perhaps. Unprecedented, certainly. But possible. She reached out, taking his hand in hers, her skin warm despite her armor. I also wish this. To be known. To be seen as something beyond my titles and function. You have already begun to do this. I would like you to continue. Leon's thumb brushed across her knuckles, feeling the faint ridges where armor met flesh. Your council won't like it. The council rarely likes anything I do, Aren said dryly. That is the privilege of sovereignty. I act according to what I know to be correct, and they adjust. She paused. Usually. 2 days later, they stood in the landing bay of a Velari transport ship that made human vessels look like children's toys. The craft was all elegant curves and impossible angles, its hull seeming to shift between solid matter and light. Ray stood with them, looking simultaneously proud and terrified. Take care of him, she said to Aren, or the entire human military will come for you. Respectfully. Aren's lips curved. I would expect nothing less. She looked at Ray with something approaching respect. You have commanded him well. He is alive because of your leadership. He's alive because he's too stubborn to die, Ray corrected. But thank you, Commander. She turned to Leon, her expression softening. Don't do anything stupid, document. When have I ever? Do you want that list chronologically or by severity? Leon laughed, pulling Ray into a brief hug. Keep them safe while I'm gone. You keep yourself safe, Ray countered. And remember, you're not just representing yourself anymore. You're representing all of us. Leon felt the weight of that settle on his shoulders. Every human who'd ever been saved by mercy instead of abandoned by calculation. Every soldier who fought not because war made sense, but because protecting each other did. Every medic who looked at impossible odds and said one more life. I'll remember, he promised. The transport lifted off with impossible smoothness, the base shrinking below them until it was just another scar on Marion 4's wounded surface. Leon watched until he couldn't see it anymore, then turned to find Aren observing him with that characteristic intensity. Nervous? She asked. Terrified, Leon admitted. Good. At his surprised look, she continued, fear means you understand the significance of what you are about to do. Only fools feel no fear when crossing between worlds. Are you ever afraid? Constantly, Aren said quietly. I am simply very practiced at not showing it. She gestured toward a seat. We have several hours until we reach the fleet. You should rest. Or eat. Or both. What will you be doing? Preparing you for what comes next. Over the next hours, Aren explained the Velari homeworld with the thoroughness of someone briefing a soldier before deployment. The cities that floated between dimensions. The council chambers where thoughts could be heard as clearly as spoken words. The protocols so complex that humans would need implants just to navigate basic social interactions. The caste systems based on capability and contribution. The way truth was valued above kindness, efficiency above comfort. It sounded beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. You make it sound like I'm going to fail immediately, Leon said. You will make mistakes, Aren corrected. Many mistakes. That is expected. What matters is how you respond to them. She paused, and that I will be there to ensure those mistakes do not become catastrophic. My bodyguard and my translator. Your ally, Aren said firmly. In all things. The fleet appeared ahead, dozens of Velari warships in formations that hurt to look at directly, their hulls inscribed with patterns that seemed to move and breathe. At the center, larger than any human structure ever built, hung the Sovereign's Reach, the flagship of the Ascendancy. It was where Aren lived, where she ruled, where Leon was about to step into a world that existed beyond anything he could have imagined. The transport docked with surgical precision. Aren stood, her armor shifting into something more ceremonial, plates that caught light like captured stars, symbols that glowed with authority that could make generals kneel. Ready? She asked. No, Leon said honestly. But let's go anyway. Her smile was small but genuine. That is the most human answer possible. They walked together through corridors that seemed to exist in more dimensions than Leon's eyes could properly process. Velari crew members stopped to salute Aren, their gazes lingering on Leon with curiosity and calculation. He felt like a specimen being studied. Probably because he was. The council chamber was vast, a space that seemed to curve away from itself, where gravity was a suggestion rather than a rule. 5 thrones hung suspended in nothing, and upon them sat the counselors Leon had met via hologram. But in person, their presence was overwhelming. Ancient. Power. High Commander Aranais, the elder said, her voice resonating through the chamber. You return to us changed. I return to you expanded, Aren corrected. There is a difference. She gestured to Leon. This is Leon Hale, field medic, my life savior, speaker with my authority. He stands before you under sovereign protection. We see him, another counselor said. We have observed his actions. We have studied his decisions. A pause. We do not understand him. That, Aren said, is precisely why he is here. The counselors conferred in their language, rapid, musical, layered with harmonics that Leon's implant struggled to translate. Finally, the elder spoke. Leon Hale, you saved our High Commander's life. This debt is acknowledged. You owe me nothing, Leon said automatically. Silence crashed through the chamber. The counselors stared at him, as if he'd just denied the existence of gravity. He refuses debt recognition, one counselor said slowly. No, Aren said. He acknowledges the debt while refusing compensation. It is, she paused. The human philosophical framework is complex. It's not complex, Leon said, finding his voice. A life isn't something you trade. It's not currency. It's not leverage. It just is. I saved Commander Aranais because she was dying and I could help. That's the beginning and end of it. More silence. Then the elder laughed, a sound like crystal bells shattering. Oh, he is perfect. Absolutely perfect. No wonder you formed a bond. Aren's expression didn't change, but Leon saw something in her eyes, satisfaction, vindication, warmth. Will the council accept the treaty framework? Aren asked. With modifications, the elder said. But yes, the alliance will proceed. Relief flooded through Leon, so strongly his knees nearly buckled. However, another counselor added, there is the matter of your bond, High Commander. It is unprecedented, problematic. A heart-bonded sovereign has never formed connection with an alien species. I am aware, Aren said coolly. Do you forbid it? The chamber went very quiet. We cannot forbid what is already formed, the elder said carefully. Life debt is sacred. What you have created is beyond our authority to dissolve. She paused, but we question its wisdom. Question freely, Aren said. I will proceed regardless. Leon glanced at her, startled by the steel in her voice. The counselors noticed his reaction. You did not know she would defy us for you, the youngest counselor observed. Leon stopped. Started again. I didn't want her to have to choose. Too late, Aren said simply. I have chosen. Repeatedly. I will continue choosing. The elder studied them both with ancient eyes. Very well. Leon Hale will remain as human liaison. He will reside in the Sovereign's reach under High Commander Aranais' direct protection. His words will carry weight in treaty negotiations, and his presence will be tolerated, if not immediately understood. Tolerated is sufficient, Aren said. Understanding will come. Or not, another counselor muttered. Humans have a saying, Leon offered quietly. Time heals all wounds. We are not wounded by your presence, the elder corrected. We are confused, fascinated, perhaps even hopeful that you represent something we have lost. She leaned forward slightly. Tell me, Leon Hale, why do you help others without calculating benefit? Leon thought about that, about every patient he'd saved, every impossible choice he'd made, every time he'd fought against acceptable loss. Because someone has to, he said finally. Because if we only help when it benefits us, we're not really helping. We're just trading. And life isn't a transaction. The counselors exchanged glances, complex, layered communication Leon couldn't fully parse. Finally, the elder spoke. The council is adjourned. Welcome to the Ascendancy, Leon Hale. Try not to cause too much chaos. Aren led him from the chamber, her pace steady but purposeful. Only when they were alone in a corridor that seemed to exist halfway between spaces did she stop, turning to face him. That, she said, went better than expected. They called me problematic. They did not forbid your presence. For Velari, that is practically enthusiastic approval. She paused. You impressed them. I mostly just told the truth. Yes, Aren said softly. That is your particular power. Truth delivered without agenda. Her hand found his. Come. I will show you where you will stay. His quarters were adjacent to hers, a suite that seemed to shift and breathe, with windows that looked out on dimensions that hurt to perceive directly. The furniture adapted to his presence, the temperature adjusted automatically, and somewhere in walls, something hummed with a frequency that felt like comfort translated into sound. This is too much, Leon said. This is appropriate for one who speaks with sovereign authority, Aren corrected. She moved to the window, looking out at the fleet hanging in the void. Leon Hale. Yes. Thank you. He moved to stand beside her. For what? For coming here. For speaking truth to power. She stopped, something vulnerable crossing her expression. For seeing me. Leon understood. In all her centuries, through all her authority and power, she had been a function more than a person. A role to fulfill. A duty to bear. Until one human medic had looked at her bleeding under rubble, and seen only someone who needed help. I'll always see you, Leon said quietly. Not the titles. Not the power. Just you. Aren's breath caught, subtle, barely noticeable. Then she did something completely unexpected. She removed her helmet. Leon had never seen her without it. Her hair was longer than he'd imagined, silver black, and shot through with what looked like starlight. Her features were sharp and elegant, those tapered ears more pronounced, her gold eyes even more striking without the armor's filter. She was devastating. This is my face, she said quietly. My actual face. I have not shown it to anyone outside the council chamber in over a century. She paused. I show it to you now. Leon's throat felt tight. Why? Because you asked to know me. Not the High Commander. Not the Sovereign. Just Aren. Her eyes held his. So here I am. Unarmored. Uncertain. More afraid than I have been in battle. Asking if what we have begun can continue. Leon reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers brushed her cheek, skin warm and faintly luminous, impossibly soft. I'd like it to continue, he said, if you're willing to navigate this with me. Whatever this is. I have no map for this territory, Aren admitted. No protocol. No precedent. Neither do I. Then we navigate it together. She leaned into his touch slightly. You changed me, Leon Hale. You showed me that mercy is not weakness. That compassion is not illogical. That sometimes the most important thing is simply to care. You changed me too, Leon said. You showed me that one life can matter enough to shift empires. That my work, our work, has value beyond the moment. He smiled slightly. And you're teaching me that opening sutures has consequences. She laughed, a real laugh, unguarded and genuine. You will never let me forget that, will you? Never. They stood there, human and Velari, medic and sovereign, two people who had found something unexpected in the ruins of a dying world. Outside, stars burned eternal. Inside, something new was beginning, fragile and fierce, unprecedented and undeniable. An alliance between worlds. A bond between souls. And the quiet understanding that sometimes the most important decision is the one made without calculation. The one that says, your life matters. You matter. And I will prove it with every action until you believe it. 6 months later, the Treaty of Marion 4 was signed in a ceremony that brought together species who had never even spoken before. The war with the crash ended not through overwhelming force, but through a coalition built on the principle that every life had value worth defending. And in the Sovereign's reach, in quarters that existed between dimensions, a human medic and a Velari Sovereign continued their unprecedented bond, teaching each other, challenging each other, and proving that sometimes the most powerful force in a universe isn't strength or strategy, but the simple courage to care when calculation says you shouldn't. Leon Hale never stopped being a medic. He just became one who occasionally advised empires between shifts. And Aren never stopped being a sovereign. She just learned that mercy wasn't weakness, it was the strongest choice of all. In the end, they didn't just change a war. They changed two civilizations' understanding of what it meant to be alive, to be worthy, to be seen. All because one exhausted human looked at a dying stranger and decided that logic was less important than doing what was right. Some would call it irrational. Leon Hale called it being human. And Aranais of Aaris, heart-bonded sovereign of the Velari Ascendancy, learned to call it love.